Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's 4 o'clock, so let's get started on time. My name's Jon Jordan from PocketGamer.Biz, and for the next hour, I'm going to be comparing this roundtable on the subjects of AI, creativity, and Gamestorming. It's quite an interesting title. I don't think I've ever compared a roundtable with that sort of title before. To unpick it a little bit, is obviously what we're looking at is AI, artificial intelligence, kind of ways in which machines can help us in the games industry. In particular, we're kind of looking at the areas of creativity and gamestorming, sort of, I guess, brainstorming for games. And we have some experts to kind of help us along. So I think for me, AI's artificial intelligence is super interesting. It's a very, obviously, incredibly deep subject. So we want to kind of capture some of that sort of depth with these our panelists, who are, each of them are working kind of separate projects that use AI in quite specific terms. But we'll also be looking to kind of go broad and pick out maybe some of the trends that we're seeing across games. So hopefully we'll sort of be able to have some good content for people who both know a lot about AI and probably the majority of people who are maybe interested in the impact it can have, but maybe aren't experts. Certainly that's where I sit. So let's start with the introductions. Tom, do you want to go first? Explain a little bit about kind of what you do and what Ludo is and does.
Great. Thanks, John. Happy to be here. And again, I appreciate all the other panelists taking the time to have this discussion for the next hour regarding AI and creativity. I am the founder and CEO of Ludo.ai, and we actually originally were started as a VR gaming studio a couple of years back, and we're in that space, primarily in the mobile VR space. And it was a terrific experience. And as we were diving deeper into it, we also realized that with the rise of other casual and hyper-casual mobile games, that we could begin to focus as well on that. So we shifted primarily towards the hyper-casual genre in about 1.5 years ago. And from that, as we began to develop games, we began to sort of look at the opportunity for, from a competitive standpoint, of trying to apply some of the current advances within machine learning and natural language processing for AI, to apply it to the actual development process for games. And for us, that specifically meant the concept itself, the idea of where do you get, a new idea, how do you brainstorm new ideas? And for hyper-casual, certainly, there's the constant pressure and need to come up with lots of new concepts to prototype and to test. It's very different from a AAA game where you can spend years on just one long form type of game. So that necessitated the constant need to get inspiration from various sources, social media trends, top charts, et cetera. And effectively what we did is we built an idea platform, as we call it, which is what Ludo is, based on some open source models and other models that I'm sure most of the fellow panelists will be familiar with. And we spent the past year building that out to where it is actually a game concept generator. You can enter in text or images, and it will come out with a variety of different new game concepts that you continue to iterate with. So we're excited to have it, and now we're just rolling it out actually in the past 2 weeks to users. So it's a recent launch. So cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Thanks for that, Tom. Gordon, something a little bit different with you guys, but I guess there is some sort of similarity maybe. But tell us about Anything World.
Always different. That's why I have a green background when everyone else has an orange one. Really, really, really nice to be here. Thanks very much for inviting us. So I'm Gordon. I'm the CEO of Anything World. And what we're doing is we're allowing people to create endless 3D worlds using AI, or more specifically, 7 machine learning steps. And what we do is we take any random 3D model, we understand it, we analyze it, classify and understand it using AI, and then we bring it to life within game engines such as Unity. So we're trying to disrupt the whole pipeline of the creation, the modeling, rigging and animation, also coding of 3D assets, and automate all of that and bring everything to life. And the end result of that is obviously, I'm horrifically biased, but it's quite exciting for us to see the stuff that people are making, because at runtime within a game or app, you can request whatever thing you want and have it appear in your 3D world and behave naturally and build out emergent game systems and also save time and money on building 3D apps. So that's what we're doing, using AI to understand 3D models and bring them to life.
Well, okay, good. Excellent. Thanks, Gordon. Okay, another, I guess, unless you tell me it's not the case, Dominique, I'm saying what you guys are doing is totally different. But tell us what you do at askblu.
Yes, hi. Thank you. Yes, thank you for being here. So yes, from you guys, you work more on the beginning of a concept of the creation of a game, etc. Where we work with real players' data. So when you start to be on soft launch or live games, so we use real players' data for two main objectives. First is to help the game balancing. You know, your game depends on key parameters like difficulty of the stages. If the difficulty is not good, players will churn. So the first thing, this is the first area where we use machine learning to help studios in a game balancing. And the second is where when you have a right balancing is what we call real-time player personalization. The key here is that your different parameters like difficulty of the stages, the add pressure in hyper-casual games, one tuning, if you deliver the same tuning to everybody, it's not optimum. So real-time player personalization allows you to offer a better experience to players by adapting in real time using machine learning, for instance, the difficulty or the add pressure or some other subjects.
Good. It's interesting there. So I think obviously AI can be used in many different ways, and some things are kind of speeding up kind of existing processes, and I guess some things like what you're doing couldn't be done to be just too much data to deal with it from a manual or a point of view, so you have to use AI. Cool, thanks Dominique. And finally, Jon, what is Wingman.ai all about?
Yeah, so and you know, first of all, great to be here. I think it's an amazing panel. All the guys have really interesting businesses, and you know, as I listen to each one of them, I think they're really compelling aspects to each one of them. I think it just speaks to the you know, the potential of the space. So very excited to be here. Wingman is a spin out actually of the first AI company that I started. And the first AI company was in the slightly aligned space with Dominique's, and you know, kind of goes to actually in the gambling industry. So taking, trying to make recommendations for which casino games might suit a player, which sports bets will a player want to play. And we started to, coming out of that, and that, you know, we're kind of the leader in that space, but coming out of that, I said, you know, what we keep seeing is that there's this need, every time you build an AI system, it's always the same in the sense that you always have to go deep into the domain and pull knowledge from experts and try to map that into an AI model. So Wingman kind of sprung from that. So effectively, the goal of Wingman is to create AI systems that understand human intent and sort of map them into actions in an environment. So the main area for us at the moment is enacting sort of human intent in games. So we're doing a lot in simulation at the moment where we take player intent and sort of turn it into NPC or sort of character action. So we love the concept of the wingman in a game. And, you know, people, I think, you know, we know, you know, 2v2 and 2v2 games, you know, Brawl Stars and, you know, the immensely popular games like that. And you kind of go, what happens if you take that game and actually, and your co-player is not a person, but an AI, right? So, you know, where it really turns the dynamics of the game into, you know, because when you tell your friend what to do, you've got a pretty good idea of what they're going to do. When you tell an AI what to do, it's a little bit more of a quantum state, right? Sometimes it's going to go right in an unexpectedly good way. Sometimes it's going to go deeply wrong or sort of create unexpected dynamics. And we're fascinated by that as it pertains to player entertainment and sort of generating new and novel dynamics in games. So yeah, we're doing a lot right now in simulation with sort of heavy, really accurate simulation games to create dynamics there. But we're really excited about the potential of this to become a retail product. And I've got a 9-year-old who is already coding in Roblox and stuff. And when I hear things, like Anything World, Gordon, your business, you look at the hurdle for developers to create a game. And it's, I think there's a lot of transformation that's going to come. That, that direction is really exciting. I think, when you look at the challenge, this concept of game storming, I absolutely love, and, creating tool sets where, again, turning human content or human intent and human ideation into a flow, into a concept. And, Ludo, same thing, right? Where you've got this concept of going, hey, how do I take this dynamic and turn it in, move it into that direction? I think that's super exciting. So anyway, very, very compelling industry to be in, and a great panel.
Good. Thanks for those introductory statements, sort of thing. So just before I forget, one of the points of having a panel like this is obviously having experts, and we can go into detail and look at some of the trends. But obviously, it's an opportunity for people who are watching to gain knowledge and obviously ask questions as well. So if you do have questions, there is the Q&A box. I will try and sort of curate them into the flow of the conversations we're having, but equally I will, as appropriate, try and get them answered as well. So I think it's kind of good. This is an opportunity as much for Q&A as much as it is for us to kind of talk about where we think the industry is going. So let's kind of balance that off. Good. So I did actually, to kind of start off. Actually coming from an industry point of view, is all you guys are in various stages, I guess, of where you are with product, but fundamentally what you're kind of offering is AI-based services to game developers. And I did kind of think maybe it'd be interesting to start off to even though you have very different products, I mean, in general, where are we with game developers at the moment? Game developers have gone through various stages, I think, for middleware. I mean, I remember back when game developers wouldn't touch kind of third-party renderers, and we have to do it ourselves. And I tend to see at least, cycles of a new technology comes on, developers go, well, we can do it ourselves. Then they realize, one, they can't, and two, it's actually quite cheap to kind of use these deeper sort of expert systems. So let's kick off with you, Gordon, and then people can chime in as they want to. How do you find it when you're sort of pitching what you can do for developers? Is it the sort of thing where now AI, people understand things like kind of DeepMind, and AI is kind of in the news generally? People go, wow, that's fantastic. How can I get involved? Or is it a bit like, that's fantastic, but that's really weird. That's going to take me like about a year to have any clue how to use that in the games I need to release like next month or even next year. Do you want to talk about
Great question, John. I guess, people are used to using tools to save time. I do have I used to make indie games as well. I have a couple of friends who are making an indie game and making their own engines and almost died in the process because it's a really hard thing to do. So I think it's accepted that we use Unity or Unreal or even Roblox to make games now. So that barrier's kind of gone. But yeah, what we do is so visual, and obviously I'm horrifically biased. It's super easy to use our product. You can use your voice to create 3D worlds as well. I didn't mention before. You can use panels, you can use code. So if we get someone interested and give them a demo, they normally see the power of it. And I guess there's a new generation that are embracing AI and machine learning to power up what they need to do. And certainly for like the medium to smaller game developers, if you can save a bunch of time and you can show them how easy it is to do stuff and how cool the results can be, then they're normally on board. We're super visual. That's why everything's green and gradienty. But once we show people, it's normally quite easy to get them on board in our case. So I think there's less and less resistance to like AI, ML driven experiences now, because it's everywhere, isn't it? From your car to the Gmail's autocomplete. Machine learning is revolutionizing everything. So why shouldn't it revolutionize game development and make it easier for people too? So I think that's the point that people are kind of on board with. Although, with your classic game developer, you do get sometimes a little bit of friction of, this is the pipeline, I've always done it this way, why should I change? And we do have that for sure. I always model and rig and animate my characters this way. Why should I use your system? It seems a bit weird. It's certainly a reaction we get, but once we show the cool things you can do, then that normally breaks down the barriers in our case.
Okay.
Gordon, I've got
a John.
Question for you in terms of the experience that you've had so far, and we've talked a little bit about it before, but certainly what we've found is with regards to, as John mentioned, sort of AI broadly speaking, and the public's perception of it. right, is that there are wildly divergent views on what it can do for you, right? And there's and so part of, I think, what we've realized is important as we've introduced sort of our Gamestorming platform is just truly explaining and educating, just set expectations of, I think people have all sorts of images of what, they think it's general AI and that it can create everything for you with just the push of the button or it's in a box. But have you experienced that type of misperception, so to speak, in terms of, okay, at the end of the day, these are, just a lot of algorithms and statistics that makes it better. But have you had that experience with users?
I mean, I guess not so much. I mean, machine learning, when you boil down to it, can be a bunch of thresholds and statistics and very unglamorous, large amounts of data when you boil it down. Yeah. But I mean, I think it's about having things done for you rather than being understanding. Like if it's Ludo generating a story and visuals for a game concept, or if it's Anything World generating whole 3D worlds. It's about like letting go of that control and letting the machine learning do its stuff for you. I mean, you have me as an expert, but I don't know very much about machine learning compared to, we have an excellent team for ML experts, and the stuff they do is extremely technical. But you don't need to know that if you're making a game with Anything World. You just need to know you can request any model and it appears by magic and it behaves naturally. So I guess there's a certain amount of control you have to give up and trust within ML and AI to make your life easier, generate the stories, generate the worlds, make everything easier for you.
Excellent.
Jon, do you want to? I guess it'd be interesting. You've worked across a few different industries with AI. Is have you found game companies kind of more accepting, or?
It's funny. I think that one thing that I see in games, and I saw it in the casino game industry a lot before this, is everybody wants to, go to a model that works, right? So to get somebody to push things outside of the box is, like when you look at, we knew the guys at King, for instance, back when they were grinding it out and trying to figure out a way to make it work. And, you look at a great business like that and when you know how hard it was in the early stages until boom, they hit one concept and it just took off, right? So I'm a big believer in kind of facilitating ideation and facilitating creation. I think ultimately this set of tools, right, where, whether it's, Tom's business here, where they're, trying to pull in a lot of kind of, it's almost like a mood board for a game, right? Kind of pull a little bit of this, wait, what if I do that? And I don't know if you guys have seen some of the recent work that's in the generative art space, combining language models with visual models and sort of using language prompts to sort of evoke these landscapes or these sort of thoughtscapes, and they're extremely compelling, right? Some of them get a bit repetitive, but when you talk about ideation, I think there's extraordinary scope here for broadening one's horizons. So I wouldn't say that in the game industry, you've and I've talked to lots of people at conferences and things, and people love a proven path, right? Understandably, right? People love to say, okay, hey, you're a this for that, right? And when you operate a little bit outside of the box and say, okay, let's take Brawl Stars, right? But make the other guy an AI, right, that you can just talk to and tell it what to do. People are like, well, I don't know if that would work. Well, it may or may not, right? And there may be 10 iterations before you hit the one that does. But when you do, you've got a $1 billion game, right? And you've got sort of dominance in that space. I kind of think of, like when Niantic took Pokemon Go and you sort of merged location with gaming and just blew everyone's minds, right? And I think that, personal bias, I think I've been a startup guy for 20 years. I think ideas are always underinvested in. I think that, a lot of people are moving money into proven concepts. And, look, I think Unity has done an extraordinary job. Unreal, Roblox, all these engines, I love them, and I think they're fantastic. I do think that it would be great to see more funding for kind of novel off-the-run concept and kind of more gamestorming, right? I love the idea of getting stuff more rapidly to a game prototype that people can play with. And I think ultimately all of these tools, right, are going to make that a reality. I mentioned my son earlier. He's got a book this thick of sort of character concepts for his little games. And he just like every day he does 2 or 3 character concepts. And I absolutely love it. And saying, hey, how quickly can, if I can scan that that page, right, and turn it into a model and turn it into a 3D model and then start to animate it and move it around, it's crazy, right? So this kind of moving from micro to meta is an extraordinary enabler, right? And you're going to see creative energy unleashed by that in a way that I think is hard to imagine right now. So I'm super excited about that. You know, I think the industry it's been hard to get a game from start to delivery, and it's been expensive. And you know, we all know that launch costs and things like that are a big deal. But I do think that we're going to transform game development with this range of tools. And I think each one of these components I'm excited about, frankly. I think they all help the ecosystem.
And I've just talking of small children, I've just had a little one come have a look, see what's going on. Nice and quiet. There we go. Right. Dominique, I guess what you're doing is a bit more I guess the decision they're making is sort of it works or it doesn't. It makes me more money or it retains better. So is that a bit of a simpler sort of discussion to have?
Well, there is two things. I think first, we started as a mobile game developer. I speak slower than Gordon, or I'm slower, okay?
I'm so sorry. I speak so fast. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so fast.
I don't understand myself half the time. Apologies.
We started as mobile game developers, so we went through all the difficulties. And we are addressing something which is a real pain point in mobile games, especially the balancing of, for instance, balancing of difficulty. When you have hundreds of levels, even thousands of levels, balancing the difficulty, it's very tedious. You put some analytic tools, you do some A/B testing, it's very long, very tedious, very difficult. So this is a real pain point. So we have a lot of interest for that from small, medium, and large companies. So the second thing I wanted to say is that we try to make it invisible. I think good AI is AI which is invisible. Our SDK is as simple as possible, and it speaks to game designers, monetization manager. No, it's not for data engineer. It's not for data analyst. Our SDK is you start a stage, you finish the stage, you win, you lose, you make an in-app purchase, you watch an advertising. That's very important for us. Everything is completely. It's not only a SaaS solution, but it has to be very. It has to speak to the game developers, the game designers, level designers, etc. And the last thing I wanted to say is about the perception of AI. For instance, for difficulty personalization, when we present what we do, very often people will ask us, but so you will have to program rules, like if you fail 3 times, make it easier. And we say, no, we don't produce any rule. We gather the data, we transform data, machine learning, we learn from the data with some objectives like optimize retention, etc. And then we make a real-time prediction. So before you start a stage, you ask to the platform will tell you, make it easier, harder, or keep your difficulty based on this learning. So, this is where they have a switch. You don't put rules, you don't program, like traditional programming, make it easier if you fail 3 times. No, it's learning from the behavior of players and using that. So that's where they make a tilt where, it's quite different from, let's say, traditional programming.
Good. We have our first question, and actually it was something that I think as you were talking, John, it's actually sort of sprung to my mind as well. I was talking about a lack of investment in AI tech, and this is a question from someone who's been trying to raise money. I mean, it's sort of like, I guess this is a reverse of the question about the game developers kind of understand and are they sort of enthusiastic about using these AI tools. I mean, when you guys were trying to raise money. AI sounds like one of those subjects that everyone should be throwing money at, but probably when you get into the details, that's rarely the case. I mean, do you think that AI and gaming as a kind of a combination is something that people are now realizing is going to be kind of valuable in the future, or did you have to really kick the doors down to even get kind of meetings to raise how much you've raised? Come on, Tom.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Sorry, just jumping in. And Amandine, thanks for that. I don't think it's so much a problem with gaming. I think that there's generally a challenge when you start to develop AI. Inevitably, you're creating a new space, and then you've got it's always this product market fit, these proof points, right, where people are looking for traction. And so if you don't have right now everybody's saying, oh, the funding scene is so hot, and everybody goes out and raises 5 million on 25. Sure, if you've done a couple of startups before, you're a proven person in a big space, that's fine. But if you say, hey, I'm going to transform gaming with AI, and people are like, well, not proven, right? So as soon as you operate outside of that proof space, and inevitably much of AI is outside the proof space, there's a challenge. So I don't think it's, I wouldn't say that it's been as easy as it should be. I think in the current funding environment, we should see an increase in, as you get more and more little pieces that add up and that work. I think you'll see a gentle transformation where things start to move in a more favorable direction. I had the sort of benefit of, we had done a startup before that we sold. So, we had some support from people that we had done well for before. I think it is still, quite substantially challenging, harder than it should be, frankly. I think there should be more VC deployment in this space. There should be a little bit more risk taking. I'm gently disappointed with the VC industry because I still find them more looking for growth opportunities than truly saying, hey, I'm going to take a flyer on something that, if it works, could be massive, right? Which I think much of AI has the potential for.
Yeah, I would echo what Jon has said. Certainly, from our standpoint, the interest has been there, but a lot of it is, as all of us are doing, is forging a new path here by combining AI with different problems within the gaming industry. And I think certainly some investors or VC groups have a wait and see attitude, but others are very much understanding that they can look further down the road and say, okay, in our feeling, the tools that we're making are just, in a sense, going to become inevitable from a developer's toolkit down the road, because it's sort of, like you have this system, this platform that never gets tired, that consistently helps you get better at the job you're doing and solving problems that you're having, whether it's with us or with any of our tools. And so I think you will find increasing investment in there in the future. Now, there are, we just read this morning what Manticore raised $100 million on the metaverse type of image. A lot of money is getting invested into sort of big play metaverse type of investments. And AI has some role within that, certainly. But I think this is only going to open up more and more as we all begin to prove and get traction with the platforms that we're offering and the users coming on board.
Dominique or Gordon, and do you want to jump in on the funding? Ease or not of?
Yes, I think I agree with Jon. Right now, for us, for instance, we are in early access. Okay, so we are not yet monetization. We have a business model, but we are in early access because machine learning, you need data to train and to have a better algorithm and to have what we call a use case. But so you need data to have a use case, but to have a use case, we need data because we do live machine learning. So we have to work with live games, So that's what we are doing. And so yes, we have like more than 15 VCs in gaming and not in gaming saying, as soon as you have use case, we'll jump, and before, it's, as you said, it's more, less, I don't know how you say, but less, we are cautious. Yes, we are cautious. And they say, but the need is there because we see that, for instance, large publishers are already working on their own solutions. And why we do what we do in SaaS solution, because for a lot of small and mid-sized studios and publishers, it's not cost effective to put up a whole pipeline that we do. We have a whole, a live pipeline, all the machine learning. We have one machine learning model per game. So for small and mid-sized publishers, it's not cost effective. So that's our market. But already large publishers are working on it. So they know that, as you said, it will come, it will arrive. So we just have to go fast.
Yeah, just to chip in as well, I think it kind of goes beyond AI. It's like if you're doing anything genuinely disruptive, which I think we're all doing here, then you don't have a frame of reference and you need an investor that's that loves the team, loves the idea, can see the potential and just takes a risk on it, because we have some great investors, including Warner Music, which they've been amazing for us. So we do have some great conviction investors, but a lot will say, this is amazing. It looks like the future. Where's the reference business model? How can I know I'm going to make money? You don't know. It's disruptive. It doesn't exist yet. We've just created it. And so You just need to find that one out of the 100 or 20 that you talk to who backs you. Most will say it's not proven because it isn't proven. So if you're doing something genuinely disruptive, I think it is more of a struggle to raise investment. If you've made 10 AAA games and they've all done well, then getting investment for your next AAA game is probably quite easy. But something genuinely new, it's going to be trickier, but more exciting, all the more exciting for it.
I can't remember which of you was talking. I think maybe it was Tom actually, but it just kind of struck me is just in general as a general kind of concept. The value of AI is, and I think actually Dominique was saying it as well. AI if it gets better over time. So AI is actually one of these actually weird technologies where it's not like we're going to get more. You need more people. You need to sort of scale it. If you have a good AI solution, Dominique's AI is going to get better at retention and generating money for you, and sort of So you think investors, I mean, obviously there's the specificities of your own individual companies and your business model and all that sort of stuff, which obviously impacts VC funding. But in general, AI is something they should be all over because basically it's going to get better over time. So the earlier you get in, you're getting really kind of massive compound interest going on there. Anyway, so here's an interesting one actually, and I think it's maybe one, probably one for you, Gordon, but maybe one for Tom as well. So I guess we like to, as human beings, to sort of define ourselves in different ways, and maybe kind of creativity is one of them. So we and I guess that's kind of true because we probably most of us know we're not great artists, but that doesn't mean we don't like to dabble in art, or we're not great DJs, but we sort of like to DJ. So it's something that's quite inherent to us. And I guess to that degree, AI coming in might be seen as taking away some of that. And I guess coming back to you, Gordon, you show your product to a animator, and he goes, "But I'm the animator. If I'm going to be replaced, it's going to be like the linen weavers 300 years ago being replaced by some big mill." So I guess that's what do you think that's one of the reasons we've not had more AI in games, because people do see that as a sort of core thing, even if not individually? Maybe a game developer might see kind of creativity. They might talk a lot about their creativity, and then that might be seen as sort of devaluing that brand by saying, we use this AI. Gordon,
you start and I'll follow up.
I guess
similar thoughts.
I think we're going to have similar answers, Tom, to this one. I mean, I think AI is an enabler of creativity. If you don't have to spend those hours and thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds modeling and rigging and animating stuff, you can use your creativity to make a really cool game or experience. So I don't think people should feel threatened by it. And also, whatever you get out of any AI system is only as good as the inputs, unless you're doing some crazy unsupervised learning thing. So when you see biases like racial biases in text generators, that's because of the input that's gone in. So you've got to reflect on what you put in as well. So it's not a magic system that can generate stuff entirely without human input. And if you look at things like music, where there's things like Magenta, I think it's Magenta, that help to generate the base of music tracks, and then the musician themselves go in and manually add stuff on top. So that blend of human and AI is very interesting. So I don't think we're at the point there where it's like, AI create an entire video game, although maybe, Tom, if you want to work on that, maybe we'll get there eventually. I feel like it's an enabler of creativity, and people should relax a little bit and, embrace the tools. And if it improves their workflow, enables them to create things they otherwise could only dream of, then that's something positive. I don't think it's going to, cause mass redundancies or people should feel threatened by it. They should definitely embrace it and see what else they can do with their creative juices. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I would, again, very similar thoughts, but I think worth repeating because this is what I had mentioned in the beginning. There is one of the misperceptions, I think, is certainly we found is that, is this a job killer? Is this AI going to take away the designer's, job? And it's absolutely not. And as Gordon was saying, it's truly a job enhancer. I mean, it is this collaborative tool platform in our case that never gets tired and that only makes you better at what you're doing, which is coming up with, new game concepts, because it's generating ideas that you might not have had, or variations of it, and you still have to iterate and make it, sensible. And at the end of the day, as was said, there's no general AI yet. There's no system that actually completely from A to Z develops the game. That's the job of the studio design head and creators is still there, but you've got this powerful set of tools that can only make your creative prospects better. So that's how we look at it. It's a job enhancer.
and I guess kind of more generally, the history of games over the last kind of 20, 30 years is not that technology comes in and there are a few people working in the games industry. We now have these teams of maybe hundreds of people working on games, and we still have all these middleware and all these tools. But the advantage is that it also allows people to scale very small. So you have never had more kind of one-man teams or small indie teams coming together. So technology actually kind of allows very different sorts of experiences to be made by very different sorts of organizations.
I think that
I guess.
I think there's a parallel to the whole YouTube scene, right? If you look at, what a big organization you needed in order to produce video of any kind or quality or sort of produce video entertainment. And now, you can be just some guy or girl sitting in front of a screen. If you've got a compelling message, then it gets out there, right? It gets discovered. Now, it's not quite as simple as that, right? Discovery is still a big issue, but, I think the games are going to move into this space where the real creative quality is going to quickly rise to the top, and you're going to kind of empower creators to be more independent, it sort of puts the onus on the studios then to probably over time come up with a different model of helping those people reach a wider audience, or to use tools like Dominique's to then really make sure that they're optimizing their game. So I think it's this really real democratization of the industry, and I think you will get a whole bunch more innovation in models and game styles, etc. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Gordon.
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking too much as usual. But yeah, even if you imagine you like eliminated the need for rigging in our case in the 3D modeling pipeline, that elimination of a technical specialty within the production of 3D assets empowers people who was otherwise out of their reach. So there's a whole new, we say we're going to make everyone a 3D content creator. So if everyone can create these 3D worlds, there's a new economy of creators like we see on social and TikTok and stuff. So everything morphs and changes, and you don't really want to just say, right, stop, we'll stop right now. That's it with the technology. We'll just do the jobs we've got now and we'll be happy. Everything shifts and morphs, and anybody working in games or technology knows that and smart enough to embrace and change a little bit. So I guess that's also part of the answer.
Yeah, I would also say, I think we probably all agree. I mean, there's never been a better time to be in the industry itself and to be an entrepreneur or a game developer, because the tools that we're all making are truly, as Jon said, democratizing sort of the industry, and for the price and what you can do now to start your own little studio, whether you're an individual or part of a small team worldwide, is incredible. And it's just a great, and the ability to ultimately even begin to self-publish. So, I mean, especially for mobile games, I mean, it's a fantastic time to be in the industry. And as we said, the creativity rises to the top. The skilled ones they're the ones going to have the hits. But we're providing all of these tools in a way that, years ago only large studios had access to.
I think actually, go ahead, Dominique.
Yeah, you can compare analytic tools. 10 years ago, a lot of studios were making their own analytic tool with MySQL, etc. Now you have very nice analytic platforms available right away, very low cost depending on your players. And I think that AI will be the same. Right now you have to work, but I think in a few years, and I hope we will be there, you'll have package machine learning solutions to help them, to help you balance, it will be very common, I think. And it helps developers. They don't like, the balancing of a game is very tedious, very long. So yes, you might take a little bit of, I don't think we take a lot of jobs, it's more they can work on which is really fun and help them in which is very tedious to do and very boring.
And I think, I guess we use the term democratization of games. I know that's kind of been a big thing for Unity. It's sort of a brand message they've had for the last sort of decade. But I actually think maybe as part of that is actually the kind of globalization of games. And I think actually, without getting too much on a personal hobby horse, I do think what's fascinating with mobile, we've seen, getting a bit away from AI, but over the last, certainly 5 years, we've now seen, some quite big studios arise in places like kind of Pakistan or Indonesia or Vietnam or and it's kind of interesting when you start to I think so without overplaying the point, games actually does become this very positive industry in the sense that it allows the tool sets that are available now allow people who wouldn't otherwise be able to make content, and certainly on mobile, which is just you can distribute it to billions of people effectively for free. That just allows a much better sort of level playing field in terms of kind of global economies. But enough of that. One thing I did want to go into a bit of detail on, maybe this is one for Gordon and John, really. But other people jump in if you feel you need to. It was interesting that both your projects seem to have voice as a sort of a, maybe not a key component. I don't know, you can go into detail there, but it seems to be using voice as a one component people could use. And that just struck me as a little bit surprising. Maybe it shouldn't do, because we're all using Siri and Alexa and all those sort of things now, which I guess are a sort of AI driven. But did you just think you've chosen to do voice because you just feel that's, I guess in some ways it's more complicated, is it? I don't know, to have AI assistants that have to deal with the complexity of you saying stuff, or does actually voice make it easier for the kind of AI systems and machine learning to actually work out what's going on? I don't know who wants to jump in on that one. Gordon, you're smiling. John, you're smiling. You can lead on that.
Yeah, it's. I think we've probably got some. Both got a lot of insights around that. For me, and again, this goes back to I keep on using my 9-year-old as a crutch here. But I was not working when, so I sort of left one thing when we had Rafa. So I was there the whole time, right? So from the time he was 0 up through now, I've been around him every single day, kind of all the time, and if there's one thing that I think is kind of the key substrate of intelligence, it's language, right? So conveying ideas, and language is an extraordinary abstraction tool and generalization tool, very, very reusable, extremely flexible. So we try to use language because it provides such a rich tapestry to sort of build things against, and sort of if you contextualize language effectively, then you can create quite extraordinary things. So, and I think it's the fastest way, you think of in a game to convey an idea, to convey an intent. I think it's pretty difficult to, if you're controlling one character, use anything but language to sort of control another. So we think from a dynamics and sort of game opportunity perspective, we think it opens up a whole bunch of stuff. But I think it's just a very, very powerful tool. And I think if, having seen my son, you see the way language develops and the way thought develops, and, how that enables quite extraordinary things to happen. I think it's a big part of AI. And when you look at GPT-3, right, the recent language model from OpenAI, there's been a ton written about that, and now they're merging these language and these visual models. It's it is like fireworks going off from a sort of opportunity space perspective. It's really expanding quickly.
Yeah, I would definitely echo those thoughts. I mean, for us, so voice is an input mechanism to create these limitless 3D worlds. You can use code, you can use no code very fashionably too. But yeah, we love voice here at Anything World. And we used to work in voice computing, making Alexa skills, Google Assistant actions. And we found that world, not to be mean to Amazon and Google, quite uninspiring. Quite, you're talking to your voice assistant, play me something on Spotify, get me the weather, just kind of like request, response, I'm done, goodbye. What if you could, bring magic to that and let people create 3D worlds or control 3D worlds in real time with their voice? So we find voice as an input mechanism super, super interesting and quite futuristic. And I think as machine learning comes on device, and Google are doing a lot of stuff here, as far as I know, not that I know very much, but as machine learning comes on device and it gets much quicker and you don't have to request stuff from a server, people will get much more used to controlling their phones and other devices by voice. And, with spatial computing, the rise of spatial computing, with Apple bring out their glasses and they're desirable, or Snap, whoever else is doing it, voice will be a natural interface to control spatial computing, we feel. And it's just a very interesting area to create and control that's natural for everybody because everybody speaks. So that's our interest in it, really. We're not natural language scientists, but we see using best of class to create 3D worlds is a super interesting avenue.
And my children are a bit younger than yours, John, but it's very interesting, as you say, how they interact with Alexa, because they it is it's kind of fascinating. They use it in some of the ways they want to play music, but then they ask the fart jokes and all that sort of. But then they actually do use it. How do I spell things? And it is kind of I wouldn't say it's totally disruptive, but it is interesting how you can kind of see how these things kind of would change as these affected quite stupid systems at the moment.
And that old saying comes to mind, right? Where people, there's some innovation, and it's always people overestimate its impact in the short term and underestimate its impact in the long term. And it's exactly like kids learning language, right? It takes them forever. Like Rafa's first word was hot, right? Because I was handing my wife a cup of tea and he was reaching out and we said hot and he said hot, right? So but that took ages, right, to get to hot. And then now, he reads like crazy things, right? And you're like, okay, this is 9 years of exponential development. And the flexibility and dynamics of language is crazy. And that if I can, I saw one of the questions pop up here that if I can, maybe from Alan Boyce, I would answer, which is what makes your AI generated ideas unique to the studio that uses your tool. And that's all about, I think the CLIP, going back to CLIP, CLIP, it's this kind of AI model that merges language and imagery. What's extraordinary about CLIP is it effectively, it's a trained model. So the information is already in the model. You can customize it or fine tune it yourself. But ultimately, what people are really playing with is using prompts to sort of put their concept into, to sort of pull their concept out of that latent space. And that latent space is sort of nearly, from a human perspective, nearly infinitely high dimensional. So, I wouldn't be concerned about saying, hey, everybody's going to get the same recommendation. The fact is that your unique capabilities and the spin you put on things, especially with language, when you start moving around this sort of concept space with language, you really pull very different results out of what seem like quite aligned prompts. So, the old idea that, everybody, if there's a good idea, 3 people have it or 5 people have it at the same time. Yes and no, right? The way these AI models sample the latent space, and Tom, you can probably speak to the specifics of this with Ludo, but we find that when you start talking about these very high dimensional spaces, you're really sampling from such an extraordinary range of inputs or sort of data that even a very small shift in the demand space will create a very different output vector.
Yeah, I would. Agree with that. Certainly, in terms of from our own use case, that we consider it sort of the randomization aspect of the sampling, that you're never going to get the same result twice, even if you enter in the same information, because of how we built the platform. And I think that is true for most of the NLP models, that you have this, and that's the exciting part of it, is that especially from a game concept standpoint, you get unexpected, you get surprised about different ideas that you never would have thought of, and it's and you have to sort of embrace that and iterate with that. So yeah, that's exactly the case.
Cool. Just a bit of homework for people who are watching. If you haven't looked at the GPT-3 kind of language AI, which is now you can just go to a browser and type stuff in. It is kind of quite interesting to play with. So it's the new language generation kind of code. And yeah, that will give you some idea of I guess the strengths and weaknesses of where that kind of AI is currently at the moment. We do have so Gordon wants to answer a question, and I think it's probably something that maybe everyone could cover. I don't know if all of you have worked out your pricing model yet, or if you want to publicly say what your pricing model is. But in general, the question is AI going to be too expensive for indies? Gordon, if you suggest you want to answer it,
I thought it
first.
It'd be an ideal opportunity for me to plug my own startup and service.
Exactly.
Very selflessly of me, yeah. So no, it's not outreach for anybody. If you go to anything.world, you can sign up. There's a free tier, and it's fully functional in our case, and I'm sure others here are similar. So yeah, we're just starting, so we're trying to build up a community of creators building stuff. So there's a free tier, fully functional. Go and try it out. I think they're not out of reach for most people. Like GTP. 3 is free if you can get access to it. There are many free tools now. Google and Amazon provide free tools. So I don't think it's a question that the AI tools are out of reach for most developers. Even with no budget, you can go and try stuff out and get building straight away, I would say.
Yeah, certainly in our case as well, and I think Dominique mentioned as well, we're specifically focused on small studios, solo developers, because we think, there's, literally, if you look at it worldwide, there's millions of game developers that need access to these tools. We're pricing it, at $20 a month. So it's very affordable regardless of which country you're in, and 30-day free trial. And as Gordon said, the point now is, because it is so new, we want to have people get access to it in a very, inexpensive and way, so that they can try it out, test it out, and realize that, wow, this is really something that is super useful and something that I want to have as part of my toolkit as a developer.
Yeah, for what we do, yes, any studio, indie developer, small studio can use it. The only thing is that for what we do, we need data. So if you have a game with very few new players per day, we work with the new players, it might be more difficult. So it's more a matter of the timing for the learning. You can be a small studio or an indie, but you need a game with at least quite not too many users, but quite some players. That will be the the limitation of to be careful about the players. Our pricing is completely based on usage. As you said, yes, it's free to test. It's very important for us that it's free to test because we like the freemium model, and we display the metrics with and without personalization, so you can see what's happening with all the metrics with and without. And so you can. That's our business model. You start free. You see what it's doing in your game. Depending on your game, you might have several different results in monetization, retention, etc. And if you like it, yes, it's based on usage. So the more you have players every day, the more you will be billed at the end of the month. So it's very simple business model.
And likewise with our tools, I mean, we've done some collaborations where we've just built stuff up front and helped people achieve things, and just said, look, there's a downstream opportunity sort of scheme where we just say, okay, if it grows to this scale, then there's some way of sharing that opportunity space. So I think generally with AI, because there is so much novelty, I think you'll find that a lot of people are willing to put up the work and to sort of front, obviously not at non-commercial opportunity levels, but if you've got a great idea or an interesting thing to develop, I think that you'll find people in the AI industry are pretty open to finding a way to make that work. So I think for solos, for indies, I think we're all entrepreneurs here, right? Anyone in AI is pretty much anyone doing a business in AI is an entrepreneur. They're taking risks. They're sort of backing this opportunity space. So reach out to people, have a conversation. I think you'll find that people are really willing to find a way to make it work.
Thanks, guys. So we've got 9 minutes left, a couple of questions, but let's sort of try and close down to some degree what we've been discussing with sort of a last question from me, at least. How do we think 2021 is going to pan out, as much as anyone can make this prediction? I mean, AI obviously has been around in games for a long time. I would suggest it's sort of seeing more interest over time. But what we tend to see with these disruptive technologies is they kind of bobble along without seemingly much happening to outside observers, and suddenly something happens. It's a killer app. A game uses a bit like you were saying, Pokemon Go. There've been lots of location-based games, and then Pokemon Go came along and exploded it all. So I guess what I'm asking is, do you think sort of game AI in any regard is going to have that kind of tipping point in 2021, or is it just kind of the level of complexity just means it's going to be a bit of a longer kind of waiting time before it kind of really has that kind of inflection point? Tom, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think as we look out at this year, I mean, as I've said before, I mean, there's so many advances in the field, and particularly with regard to, say, computer vision and computational creativity, where you're seeing, new research papers released almost, on a every other week basis. And what's with, I think Jon mentioned DALL-E and Clip. And I think you're going to see, for us, where we think an exciting opportunity is going to happen is absolutely the ability to have images that can be transferred via text, and being able to generate different types of styles based on certain images, whether photos or game graphics. So 2021, I think, is just really going to be heads down, everyone just working to prove out their own models and platforms. And certainly there could be unexpected breakthroughs, but I mean, you feel like this industry is just on a tear in terms of the amount of people who are providing new models or papers that are doing interesting things. So we're excited to be part of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we're waiting for the killer game or killer app a little bit. I feel like with games, we're right at the beginning. There's not even that many people using natural language interfaces within their text-based games. And think about narrative stories that don't have that like tree kind of branching structure that are truly driven by AI, or 3D worlds that are generated, endless worlds. There's so much that gaming can do to embrace this. And maybe there'll be like one or two big titles where the average gamer is like, wow, how did they possibly, like No Man's Sky, but taken to the next level, how did they possibly achieve that? And it'll be driven by AI, and then maybe we'll get more acceptance. But the tools that are out now and being developed are amazing. So I think it's just a question of time before those things land. Whether it'll be this year, I have no idea. I can't see the future. I can barely see the past. That was my answer.
Okay. Yeah, I'd feed into that. I mean, when I look at the, is it going to be 2021? I think Tom's right. I think a lot of people right now are heads down. We just delivered literally today a product to a customer in a simulation environment. And, to one of the recent questions that was posted, is the games industry leading the way with AI? I think in a lot of ways it is. I think there's a ton going on. It hasn't really made its way all the way through to the product space, at least not in the retail sense, in the player sense. But there's a whole bunch of work going on behind the scenes that you're going to see feed into games over the next 5 years. I think certainly in 2022, we are going to see a big game that has a really significant AI component, just like in the art and NFT space. I mean, this is how, like, the last 30 days have been absolutely mental from a creative output perspective, right? There's a ton going on that's going to spill over into games for sure. And it's not going to, art is more unstructured. Games have to have a certain structure in order to work, right? This is why Dominique has a business, why Tom has a business. But I think when you merge that creative energy with the kind of monetization and rigor around player entertainment, measuring things, feeding it back, by 2022 we're going to see a $500 million or $1 billion game that has a significant AI component, whether it's a lot of generative content within it, or it's got player dynamics like the ones we build in it. For sure it's on its way. We're just about there. I think you have to, and it's not too late to get it into the space. Frankly, I think a lot of people are like, oh, AI has already happened. When I saw my first server farm with a bunch of casino games in Antigua, it was like this room and it was full of servers and they were all serving casino games. I'm like, wow, that industry's done. That's already happened. That was literally 0.1% of today's online casino market. It's like that in AI games right now. The next 5 years are going to be absolutely crazy when you look at transformational dynamics, transformational content, etc. It's gonna be amazing.
Yes, also if you speak about 2021, in what we do, especially mobile gaming, and what we do in players' behavior, you had a big shift. People were a lot into user acquisition, a lot of game tech in user acquisition, and then you have this IDFA problem coming, and now a lot of people start to think, let's spend more time retaining these players so hard to acquire, you know what I mean? And so, in what we do, every game is completely isolated. What we do, we don't need to know what we do in another game. We study, we learn from your behavior in one game, and one game is different from the other game. That's why we have one model for a game. So now, yes, I think this type of where machine learning is completely, we don't know who is the player. We don't care. We call that behavior data. We are looking at what you are doing, but we don't care who you are. You know what I mean? So yes, there is a shift for the last few months, thanks to IDFA, I say, toward machine learning, which is more, less personal, I say.
So yes, I'm feeling we could go on for another hour. That we've barely kind of scratched the surface here, as Dominic starts throwing up some other terms that we've not discussed. And equally, it's kind of funny that we've not discussed kind of visual AI at all. I mean, obviously, like a major human sense, which obviously AI can massively feed into and would have kind of big repercussions, and we've not mentioned it apart from now at the end. So I think that just goes to show what a big subject it is. And it is also interesting, as John says, I think pretty much for unless a kind of a part of the gaming sector has gone so massively mainstream, like mobile games and $2 billion, 2 billion players, anything else, anything technology-wise, when you get into it, you always think, oh, I'm too late. I mean, that's all happened. and then that's, I guess, like you were saying, John, that's the failure of our understanding to learn how significant these changes are over the long term, and that means sort of a decade. And you can come in 3 or 4 years into one of those kind of big shifts in technology, and you know, it's almost impossible to be too late. So anyway, we've hit our time. I would like to thank our panelists for their input and their expertise. So I guess you've all explained kind of where you are, so you can go and check out their websites and look at their free services, and yeah, definitely something I would recommend. So thank you, Dominique, Gordon, John, and Tom. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to everyone who asked questions. Obviously, I guess you can find these guys on the usual places, LinkedIn, I guess probably most of you on Twitter as well. But probably LinkedIn is the more professional place to go for first. So please do follow up with them. And I hope everyone enjoyed the roundtable. So PocketGamer.Biz, we're doing roundtables on a monthly basis, so covering different subjects that are important to the mobile games space. So please check the website to see when new ones are coming up. Subscribe to us on YouTube, where we are putting the recordings of these videos as well, so you can check out previous examples. But thank you, everyone who's been involved, and come back next time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Great discussion.
Great panel. Well done, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, well done.